Thought about that
long week
rabbit
in
on the
general.
porch, man. That still weirds me out.
Fourth month.
All of them inside when they sat down. They came in separately.
All right, we are on air, and it is 4:01. So I think we'll go ahead and get started with the Community Planning and Transportation Committee for the month of April. We have 4 items on the agenda this afternoon, and the first one, as usual, is the Public Transit Ridership Report. We have Taylor here to give us some information about what's going on this month.
Yep. Happy to be here, council member, and I know you have a lot more on your agenda, so I'll try to be brief. The first update, which has been on here for quite a while, our response to COVID. I'm actually wondering if we maybe take that whole section off in the next month or so, because the suspended Route 144, it's going to be reinstated on May 3rd because it's open to walk-ins. So it is a limited service route. We only operate it Tuesdays and Friday afternoons for people that really need to go to the Social Security office and more and do their business, right? So that will be reinstated. And then the other bullet under the service changes and policies, the mandatory face coverings, as many of you probably know, it was lifted recently. So we are no longer requiring that on our buses, and OKC or Norman is requiring that. So both of those would go off, and then we're continuing to do the enhanced cleaning of the vehicles, including fogging every night of the vehicles that are used. And then all of our transit vehicles have the operator barriers on them to ensure that the staff doesn't get inadvertently sick, because if we don't have the staff, we can't provide the service, right? So if you guys have no qualms with that, I'll probably take that section off next month, and if there's any change, I'll let you know. But we will continue to do the enhanced cleaning as we've been doing. Going on to the Go Norman Transit Plan work. Again, as you all know, we acquired the old Chase Bank building at 320 Comanche Street a couple months ago, and we are getting close to coming to council with a proposed contract for architectural and engineering work to help us really think through and finalize what we can do to make the building functional, and then get that work done so we can change the routes like we identified in the plan. And then jumping a couple of more bullets down to the last one on the page, Nelson Nygaard's amendment number 1 to come back and help us think through the routing of the downtown sections, because we changed the preferred location of the transit center from the depot to this bank site, is well underway, and really a lot of work just to go back and clean that up. Not a lot of changes to the routes outside of downtown, just making sure that we got that all looking well. And then in the next couple months, after we get the Go Norman Transit Plan amended with that change, we'll actually go out to the community with proposed service changes. So while the plan is on the books, we need to go back out and say, this is what we want to do, and make that very clear, and then ask for input before we actually go out and implement it and start putting in new bus stops and really making the plans final. So just wanted to give you all a heads up that we are working towards that as well.
That'll be at the next meeting, you said?
Next couple of months, we're trying to finalize this work with Nelson Nygaard and get the plan amended, so that's what we can stand on when we go to the public and say this is what we want to do for our service changes.
Okay, thanks.
And then on the backside, a lot of the information is the same from the last meeting about our vehicle maintenance and vehicle procurement, but I did want to mention at the top there about grants. We submitted our raised grant application for the pantograph chargers for the electric buses that we're going to get this summer. And now have our eyes on a couple of FTA competitive grants that are due at the end of May. So we'll be coming to council at the end of May, asking for more resolutions of support as we submit those applications. And that's how we got one of our electric buses last year, was through one of these competitive grants. So we're just trying to maximize the local dollars that you guys appropriate every year for one bus and try to turn it into 2 or 3 buses, right? So we feel pretty good about that. A lot of the extra money that's flowing from the federal government is going into these existing formula programs where they have competitive applications. So we're not seeing necessarily new programs, we're just seeing more money available. So we feel pretty good that we might be able to get a piece of that pie. And then I'm just going to go over to the ridership real quick and conclude and let you guys ask any questions you have. But we had about 25,000 people ride our system in March, and compared to February, that was about 8,000 more. But we had a few weather events, so that kind of drug it down. But compared to March of last year, we had about 200 more people per day riding, and that's a pretty good increase. Fiscal year to date, we've had 196,000 passengers, and that's a 27% increase over the same period last year. So you can see the comparison from this March to last March in the table to the right on the first page of the performance report, and all routes are performing a lot better than they were last year, and except for the Social Security route, which of course hasn't been operated in over a year, so it's still zero, but we'll start doing that next month. With that, I'll take any questions.
Well, encouraging to see. Maybe it's because of gas prices, I don't know, but that more people are using the public transit system. There's only one minus on here for the wheelchair. March FY21.
Right.
Every single other number is a positive or a plus increase. 26%, 26.8% increase from the years or on the year so far. Is that what I mean? It's pretty significant. I mean, to me, again, for the folks that aren't convinced that people ride the bus, I think it's pretty clear that a lot of people do ride the bus. That's a lot of car trips that aren't being made, that aren't clogging up the streets with traffic. So, which we always hear about in Norman, the traffic's so bad, right? So, any comments, questions from anybody about that?
I was
Okay.
curious about
Yeah.
the Social Security
Councilor
office.
Studley.
Is that, are they opening it back up to where we
Yeah,
can go in there?
we took a little bit to make sure we had all of our stuff in place, but on April 7th, I want to say, nationwide, they opened up back walk-in appointments for Social Security office.
Great.
I
That's
believe it's
great to hear.
nationwide.
And so you said that you'll start with Embark next month? for
May
that?
3rd.
May 3rd, okay.
Yeah, and we do that Tuesdays and Friday afternoons. We do one trip. We stop at a couple places in Norman, take them up there at the beginning of the afternoon, and then we go back and pick anybody up that's coming back and drop them back off. So
Thank you.
Councilor Hall.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a brief comment that it's just so encouraging to see all the positive momentum after, coming out of the pandemic and seeing that people really are increasing being on the bus, and just the decision we've made about the transit hub and all of the grants that we've been successful with so far and hope to continue to grab a piece of that pie. And I just am so encouraged at the direction that our public transit is going right now. So thanks for all your efforts.
thank you.
Yeah, and would add on that in the Finance Committee, we've found that we've been informed that it doesn't look like public transit needs any general fund dollars. We're talking about maybe putting some in for the micro transit thing, but we're not having to subsidize this year. We're projecting anyway.
Yeah,
Which is-
we're the first couple years we were, relying a little bit more than we'd like to on the general fund, and we feel like we're getting pretty close, if not already there this year.
And we might have to next year, the year after, but the sales tax is doing really well. Norman Forward sales tax, public transit, and public safety sales taxes are doing really well right now, thankfully. So a year where transit's paying for itself, you could say. Okay, wonderful news. If there's no other, thank you very much, Taylor, I appreciate it. We'll go ahead and move on to item number 2, which is a discussion regarding a traffic study on West Lindsay Street following the Lindsay Street bond project. This was an item I was interested in, just kind of just following up on, we completed a project, how is it doing? Is it exceeding our expectations for traffic? Are there problems that have arose in the design that we didn't think? All those types of things. So I thought it'd be good. And not just with the Lindsay Street project even. I mean, I've thought on a bigger scope, all the 2012 bond projects and then the 2019 ones as we start doing those. And The Norman Forward projects, I've been thinking about trying to do having a follow-up on how's the library doing now that it's been in use for 3 years, that type of thing. So, but we'll talk about Lindsay Street specifically today, and we have David here, so.
Did you want to kick us off, or just go ahead? Jump right in. All right. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background on the Lindsay Street project if you didn't know what it was. We'll start off there. We'll go into congestion, looking at traffic volumes before and after construction. We'll look at safety from 2 different angles. We'll look at the 3 years pre-construction and compare those to the 3 years post-construction, because we have those years. And then we'll offer some closing thoughts at the end. So when we were developing our comprehensive transportation plan, this was a big component in the comprehensive transportation plan. This community survey that went out, transportation. I don't know whether it's good to rank high in a community survey like that or not, but we tended to rank pretty high in that survey. And that was a big impetus in the Lindsay Street project. So if you didn't know these statistics, prior to construction, Lindsay Street was the #1 rated stormwater problem in Norman. It was the #1 traffic congestion corridor in the Oklahoma City metro area. We had a crash rate nearly 3 times the national average for similar roadways. And one of the things we looked at going in was, if we don't try to consolidate some access, it's for the project is not going to succeed. So that was a big thing going in, is just try to consolidate some of those driveways.
And from what I recall, maybe it was something like it was the most number of accidents in a mile stretch of road in the metro or something like that. In a single mile, it had the most
Right.
of all of Oklahoma City metro area.
Happy to say that's no longer the case.
And we had evidence.
I don't want a spoiler alert, but that's no longer the case.
Well, and we had evidence too that not only the flooding issue, but the traffic congestion and the accidents, people were actively avoiding that area and actively avoiding the businesses on West Lindsay Street. So we heard a lot about, what the impact has been after the project, but folks forget that before that project, there was serious problems that were really hurting businesses.
Exactly.
So.
Not to mention special events like OU home games. It was not easy to convert that to one way in and one way out. It's a whole lot easier when you got a 4-lane median divided road to make that work. So some of the things that we looked at, pre-construction on Lindsay Street, it carried about 21,000 vehicles per day. There were about 90 driveways within 1 mile. Yeah, that's a staggering number. It really is.
We met with every property owner about 8 times. And close to.
That's not the way you design roads.
The goal was to try to close half of them, I think, right?
All right.
That was what we wanted
the
to
goal.
do.
We got 2.
Got 2.
Hey,
And now there's a new one that's
a win is a win.
I'm sorry, it would have been out of domain, and we didn't want to
Yeah,
do
right,
that.
right.
You didn't want to do that, we didn't want to do that, so we couldn't make them.
Hey, we got one close with Starbucks, right?
But there's a new one in front of by the O'Reillys, that new building. So I guess that's a net 1-0.
But the crash frequency on the corridor, it lended to a very unreliable corridor. People never knew what to expect from one time to the other. I've been rear-ended on Lindsay before. I mean, that was pre-construction.
And that was the
post-construction.
issue too,
Right.
not fatality accidents
Exactly.
necessarily, but a ton of low-speed fender benders.
But we'll get some of the numbers suggest that even the injury accidents did reduce, so that's a good thing. There weren't many, but they did reduce. Traffic projections were consistently showing that traffic on Lindsay was going to grow between 1% and 2% annually for people traveling from I-35 to the OU campus. If we hadn't done anything, the level of service on the corridor in 2035 would have been F. If, when we did the project, it will become C. So a pretty significant improvement in that. That's a passing grade in most places, I think. So the goal was to create this vibrant roadway that might attract some businesses, but it would also be more safe for all users. That was the big thing. It's got a lot of multimodal elements to it. It's got bike lanes. It's got bus shelters and bus pullouts. It's got new sidewalks, things like that. So it's been very good for that aspect. So a little bit about the project and how I looked at the before and after study. The project construction began on July 5th, 2016. So that kind of established, okay, if I look at 2013, 2014, and 2015, I'd have 36 continuous months of nothing related to construction. So that defined my pre-construction area. Construction was substantially complete on December 15th, 2017. But some activities probably extended into like addressing punch list items, things like that, probably carried into 2018. So my 3 post-construction years were 2019, 2020, and 2021. I know that gets into a little bit of a COVID thing, but people were still driving, maybe not as much and maybe not as carefully. But I think we've got some good information to share. So congestion, average daily traffic in 2014 during that pre-construction period was 20,221. Using ACOG's methodology for a level of service E, that number is 18,900, so it was clearly over capacity, heavily congested. The average daily traffic in 2020 in the post-construction year was 19,213, so a little bit of a decrease, and probably some of that's related to COVID. Using that same methodology, a roadway like Lindsay Street would be able to carry 38,000 because you got 4 lanes instead of 2 lanes. So when you divide the volume by the capacity, you get a much lower number. So it's very little congestion, which I think you can see that when you drive the corridor now.
So you get to vary.
There's a couple of spots.
Yeah, there are. Every road's going to have that. So a little bit about the safety area. The study area went from the west edge of 24th to the east edge of Berry Road. I didn't want to get into the widening that went down to Pickard because it was harder to find where the collisions were. I wanted to have a defined location. 224 total collisions in the pre-construction period between 2013 and 2015. 121 total collisions between 2019 and 2021. 46% reduction in the total number of collisions. We had 46 injury collisions in the pre-construction period and 36 in the post-construction period, 22% reductions. Again, those are smaller numbers, but they are still on the decline, so that's a good thing. Collisions at signalized intersections. These are big because in the pre-period, we had 3 signalized intersections in the study area. Post, we had 4 because we added the one at Wiley. Signalized intersections are notorious for generating rear-end collisions because people think somebody's going and they're not, and they run into the back of them. There can be other types of collisions, but they're generally less severe at signalized intersections than they are at unsignalized intersections. So you would think that more signals on the corridor means more rear-end collisions. That's a logical assumption, but in fact, that was not the case. We had 50 signalized rear-end collisions with 9 injuries in the pre-construction period and 33 and 7 in the post. So 34% reduction in the number of signalized rear-end collision and a 22% reduction in those same collision types that had injuries. So again, good numbers to share. This is very compelling evidence that congestion was reduced. Because if you have less congestion, you're less likely to be in a rear-end collision. Another common type of a collision at signalized intersections is the right-angle collisions. Invariably, somebody's going to run a red light and hit somebody who's got the right-of-way. We had 13 such collisions in the pre-construction period with 6 injuries. In post-construction, we had 6 with 3 injuries. So 54% reduction in the right-angle collisions and a 50% reduction in the same type of collision with injuries. This was a pleasant surprise because we did add that additional signal.
Councilmember Schuler?
Did we look at which of the intersections these are happening at specifically?
I have that information. It's not in here.
My assumption is that it's happening at 24th because that's where I have seen
Right.
most of these types
Right.
specifically of collisions.
I do remember that there were collisions happening at all the signalized
Okay.
intersections. There wasn't one that was left out. I think, yes, the exposure is greater at 24th because there's more traffic there.
Right, yeah. And I've seen,
Especially on
I've
that cross
personally
street.
seen
Sure.
one there.
The remaining types of collisions that generally occur at signalized intersections were reviewed as a single category because the numbers were getting smaller and smaller and smaller. It really didn't make sense. And they're generally less dangerous than those right angle collisions. So those other remaining types, we had 3 collisions in the pre-construction period. 15 in the 3 pre-construction years, of which 3 had injuries. Those numbers actually increased slightly to 18 with 8 injuries. Now, those are increases. The additional signal at Wiley is going to play a big part in that. But regardless, those numbers are low, so they're less concerning than some of the other numbers.
Well, I think it might have been lower if we'd have been able to do those roundabouts. Eliminated those left turns.
And the 2-lane, remember, the 2-lane option was recommended.
Yeah, Barry and Lindsay, yeah.
We'll have a before and after study down the road with a roundabout.
Yeah,
We can look at that.
Yeah.
So collisions at unsignalized intersection, that's generally where, we see a lot of people turning into driveways on multi-lane roadways where the first lane, come on through, and the second lane doesn't know that they're doing that, and, they get T-boned in the middle of the intersection. But one of the goals of the Lindsay Street project was to improve safety because we had a large number of driveways on the corridor. Strategies to improve those included some driveway consolidation, albeit not a lot, but some, and the median helped manage some access as well. So we were trying to get rid of some of those left turns, make U-turns, come back and make a right turn, that sort of thing. The 3 pre-construction years had 32 unsignalized right-angle collisions, of which 5 had injuries. The 3 post-construction years, 22 and 6. So we had a reduction in the total number of accidents, but a slight increase in the number of injury accidents. But, the way if you look at collision reports, a lot more things now are reported as injury accidents because they really don't know if there was an injury or not. They're kind of erring on the side of caution. So that could explain the increase from 5 to 6. But regardless, those numbers are pretty small, and that's not a number to get overly excited about.
The speed limit is the same
Yes,
as it was before, right?
right. Just to wrap up some of the traffic considerations, congestion has improved because the additional lane in each direction and the similar or slightly lower traffic volumes. We know that's a fact. The most dangerous forms of collisions are lower post-construction, and the number of injury collisions are also generally lower. There were some instances where they were not, but for the most part, they were lower. Access management has helped, particularly the median. All in all, based on the numbers that I reviewed, this project was a huge success from a traffic safety standpoint.
Okay. There are, I would agree. There are a couple parts that I've noticed, and maybe others have too, I'm sure. Going west, 24th and Lindsay there, I've often seen that north lane back up to
Yeah.
McGee, if not further. I know we have a right turn lane there too, but that's one thing I've noticed about a lot of backup right there. And then of the Barry and Lindsay, the north leg, cars coming from the north going south, trying to either go south on Barry or turn right on Lindsay Street. I know that backup was there before this project and has continued. So those are the two parts of it that I've noticed of maybe not. I don't know if there's anything we can do to address the 24th and Lindsay one, but those are two ones that I've noticed as being an issue that we might want to look at going forward if we're not already. But Councilmember Schuler?
Yeah, I'm on Lindsay a lot.
Yeah.
It's in my ward. And I think what the first one at 24th kind of is the approach towards getting on 35. And so most people are trying to get over in the anticipation because there's not a ton of leeway to get over after you cross the intersection to get onto the ramp going northbound on 35. So I don't know how much there is that we have an ability to mitigate that. That's just kind of what I see in that section. And then I would assume that on the other side, going eastbound towards Berry, it's that we're anticipating going back down to a 2-lane. And so people are also trying to manage like what they're trying to do, expectations, getting over into that lane that's going to go straight through, or not understanding that we're coming into kind of a pinch point right there at Berry, and either going north or south. So I don't know how much from a traffic engineering standpoint there is to mitigate some of those bottlenecks because of the constraints on either end. One of the things that I notice frequently is the turnaround area that is right in front of the driveway and is like in the driveway of the Homeland parking lot. And that has a lot of opportunity for accidents. I see a lot of people not understanding who has right of way, what the situation is, coming out of the driveway, trying to go, eastbound on West Lindsay, and people coming out to try to make that U-turn, and it's pretty dangerous. So I don't know if we've looked at managing that specific area. Most of the other roundabouts aren't encroaching on a driveway. I think the other one that kind of does that is the one that's closest to Berry, in front of, on the north side, as you're trying to kind of loop around you get in that left-hand lane to potentially turn left north on Berry, and people will try to loop around there. Those are the 2 points that I see that still have some cause for concerns of safety, and I don't know if that is backed up by any of the data.
You take a look, your data would show exactly where the
Right.
lanes are at. Yeah, happy to follow
So,
that.
yeah, those are just 2 places that I notice frequently.
I will tell you that in
Traveling.
looking at the data, there were no collisions in any of their turnarounds.
Okay.
So, yeah, I was
Interesting.
kind of wondering that too, about
Yeah.
how have the U-turns lanes been working out, at least data-wise. I mean, I observe it, and it seems to. I see people that they try to turn left in one of them that's supposed to be for turning right, or they'll use it. They'll drive the wrong way if they can get it. It's close enough. So which is interesting. And I noticed too that going east on Lindsay towards Berry, a lot of folks, I say a lot, there are a lot of folks that do wait till the very last minute to realize, oh, this lane is a right only. And there seems to be only one sign that says that, and it's in front of maybe Subway. So it's pretty close to where it ends, and there's a tree in front of it too, I think. So I don't know if that's another thing to address if it hasn't already, Councilmember Schuler.
I haven't heard anything about this. I'm wondering. I know specifically kind of in the box around Wiley and McGee, there's, some turnarounds, but I typically personally will use the neighborhood as kind of a box to go around that area instead of making the loops, and I live in between there. So I know the streets pretty well. Have we seen or any other concerns about like more traffic flow through the neighborhoods because there is a signalized light now at Wiley?
I have
and then
not heard
people
that.
kind of going up? Okay, I was just
It
curious.
could be the case, because people will do that.
Like I said, I
Right.
haven't noticed, and nobody has raised concerns or complaints with me, but about those specific streets. But
And those are streets that we probably wouldn't have had a reason to count, so I wouldn't know what it was like before. I could count now, but
Right.
I'd have nothing to compare it to.
yeah, okay, just curious.
I'm looking to it. One of the driveways we closed was ours, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're the net of one.
The net of one is the one that we owned. Yes, at the Nick there.
A willing participant.
Maybe not willing, but we took advantage of it.
Took one for the city.
And I've expressed before to some business owners, I said, if the median might not have been necessary if we had been able to close half of those driveways. But the trade-off is you want to keep your driveway, great, but we're going to have to control the access, left turn access, because that was where all the accidents, especially in front of Classic 50s and that Homeland one.
Where I was rear-ended, right in front of Classic.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, we did something else very unique. I don't know that you all know this. I think I'm from home and remember it, but for the first time in my career, we hired a planning consultant for the benefit of each property owner to help us encourage them to close the driveways, but to help them redesign their properties. We just handed it to them. You all approved the contract, but this is a planning consultant. They will help you redesign your entire property for a future redevelopment. They'll help you understand what it's worth. And our goal was to encourage them to close driveways or combine driveways. Out of 100 tenants, we had one that took advantage of that program.
Oh
the
my
other goal there was
gosh.
to try to
Still
convince.
can't believe that.
The other goal was to try to convince him to look at the thought process that was there behind this entire corridor to move the buildings up, make it feel walkable, more of a Main Street feel, put the parking in the rear. I still keep wishing that just I think if one person did on that corridor, everybody go, that's so cool. But no one, we can't get anybody to bite on it.
That was the
That's
goal.
what
It
I
will
should-
happen, but we tried to stimulate that, and the council really was very proactive in that effort,
It's-
but we only had one applicant.
It's really interesting to hear that and to hear that that was part of the thought process and the discussion, because I know now, after we see and we've seen now the redesigned Lindsay Street project, and I hear that a lot from constituents about, oh, well, this isn't exactly what we thought we were getting, and that was really what the hope was, I think, and still is the hope of what we would like Lindsay Street to look like, is bringing, the buildings forward, making it feel more walkable, more community-based, putting the parking in the rear, and that still is very much the vision that I think people want, and I hear it a lot. It's comments that I was hearing about Starbucks as well when that comes up. Conversations that we hear about the other corner that is in Ward 4,
Lindsay and Barry.
Lindsay
Yeah.
and Barry. And so, it's interesting to hear that we tried and provided
Yeah.
an opportunity for our business owners, our property owners to do that, free consulting, to think, and that it wasn't taken advantage of. It's helpful to know those things when we go back. But is there an opportunity to think about that again?
Absolutely.
Because I think that now that we're seeing the fruits of this labor, of what the street now looks like, I think people can now get the vision of, okay, now what's the second life or the new life of Lindsay Street, and what's the next part of this project and design? And I think it's just that. And so we need to think about,
And to try to share that information, we had a public meeting with all the business owners invited. Then we broke it down and did it by quarter-mile section. And then we went door to door. So it was an extraordinary effort to reach out, and most of that was around the around trying to access control. But we did share this with them, and
well, like I'm
it
saying,
was a tough one.
I think that now things have changed, right? The street is now finished. And so you can see, okay, the city has put in this incredible investment into changing the dynamic for safety, for wellness, for thinking about what this could look like. And so now we have the opportunity to go around on the backside of this and say, okay, remember when we talked about this? Also, we have a lot of new businesses, a lot of new property owners that might get behind this now that didn't then. So I would love to work on that. Yeah.
I got into it on Twitter with Mike Steely the other day. Because on the radio, he said he just heard from his good friend Doug from Sooner Legends and how the city of Norman's terrible planning is the reason why they were gone. And I went on Twitter and I was like, Mike Steely, first of all,
No.
I was like, that was an ODOT. ODOT did all the work.
They closed down the interchange.
Yeah, and I said the city fought to keep that interchange when ODOT wanted to close it, and so I just went into it about. So it's still out there going that that these stories about things, and I did want to mention too the one point of, I guess that I've question about when I've been driving by it is the new plasma center and the driveway that it does, the new driveway that's kind of in the U-turn lane too. I was kind of curious about that a little bit, so I don't know if you might have anything to tell us about it.
There really was no option to put that anywhere else. It really doesn't interfere with the functioning of the U-turn. There are a couple of others that are actually that way. In fact, we kind of worked hard to try to, the one going into there at Homeland, it would have been really bad. That lining up was a best case scenario, and I think we may have made a few feet adjustment to get that to work. But we did look at that, and when that came forward and we were looking at the permitting on that, we did look at that. We really worked with it. We worked with David and his group, and in the end, the where it is actually is about the least impactful on it. But obviously, you know, people pulling out there are gonna have to,
Yeah.
you know, the person on the road has right of way. But, you know, so
right next to
it will
Taco
be a little
Bell
challenging,
and
but it won't be,
Yeah.
it's not dramatic or negative.
Yeah, this was a lot I was hoping would be like a mixed-use project, because it was like it was like basically the last empty lot on Lindsay Street. And so I'm sure the Plasma Center will help a lot of folks, but it would have been cool to see a urban mixed-use development on that lot. Councilor Hall?
Yeah, just a couple of comments. Number one, I really appreciate the presentation because you really have provided a great summary of the history before and after. So would you share that PowerPoint with us so that we can keep that? So found that the results very interesting, but just being able to see, you know, remind us all of the history of where we started and where we ended up. So that's number one. I just really like to hang on to that for future reference.
Post
But-
the whole slideshow in the Ward 2 page.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yes, I would like to
Yeah.
put this up for them.
Yeah.
Look what we
And-
did.
And then just to, what year was that offered to the property owners?
We would have started in 14.
Okay.
14, 15, 16, in that range.
So, you know, I just am thinking of how we have elevated the conversation since then and how I think the general understanding of what we're hoping to see in the future really does open the opportunity to revisit this again at some time. And I think just the interest in the zoning application at Lindsay and Berry, the engagement, I mean, very intense engagement of neighbors and neighborhoods in Ward 2 and Ward 4 of, you know, really wanting to see this end product of a more walkable, active street. So I'm really intrigued. You know, it's never over, right? Now that we see it working and the improvements that have been made and what the possibilities are, and still really having an opportunity at that corner of Lindsay and Berry to do something special that could in turn maybe encourage other property owners. And I think the property owners themselves are pretty engaged right now too on a variety of issues. I know
Yeah.
city staff has met with the Lindsay property owners and business owners several times in the last 18 months or so on a variety of issues. So I think the engagement and the interest certainly is there, if not, I would say heightened more than it has been in the last couple of years. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to see what the possibilities are. But really appreciate your presentation. Very helpful.
Absolutely. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate the
Absolutely.
work looking into that. And yeah, like I said, I would be very interested in a follow-up on some of our other projects and see how they're doing.
So maybe 24th next?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, whichever one. Cedar Lane, 12th Avenue.
I was thinking that we've not brought it back, but the single point urban interchanges at Lindsay and Maine
Yeah.
are extraordinary. The safety improvements are extraordinary. We'd like, I'll have David put that together.
Yes.
High accident, we're talking 40,000, 50,000 cars a day
Wow.
for those interchanges. And the accident rate dropped in half, I think, in the early years. It's remarkable.
Amazing.
And most people don't know that. They just
Yeah.
know it's a new
Yeah.
interchange. And that's an ODOT. We worked closely with ODOT. They did the design, but that whole corridor where you start I-35 and move down to Lindsay, like David showed, is extraordinarily better and safer and easier to drive. It's what we set out to do.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you so much.
So interchange is next.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, whichever ones.
All right.
Okay.
But you get me again.
Yay.
Okay, so item number 3 on the agenda this afternoon is an update on the historical sign installation project.
Okay. So what we're going to do with this presentation, we'll talk a little bit about the project in general. We'll go through how we selected a contractor and then each of the 5 signs that have been identified for this first phase. And then talk a little bit about the finances that we're looking at. So this project evolved during the last year's, or the current fiscal year's budget discussions last year. Amendment number 3 was the item that added $30,000 for the establishment of a project to put up some historical markers and signs at your meeting on June 8th, 2021. Being a sign project, this project was assigned to the traffic division. I got to do that, so that's fine. We had a kickoff meeting with Andy Rieger, who was kind of our citizen advisory lead, on August 23rd, 2021. Following that meeting, Andy worked on a draft of the text of the first sign, the naming of Norman sign, and we sent that information to various contractors, sign contractors in the metro area on November 15th, 2021. We got the 3 that we sent out, we got quotes from all 3. They ranged from $5,453.26 to $13,750, depending on what size we wanted to use. Interestingly, Walker was the only one who brought up the possibility of using different size signs. But that wasn't, like I was telling Councilmember Hall before this meeting started, the signs aren't meant to be billboards that you can read as you drive down the road. You're supposed to stop and get out and look at the sign, read the sign. There's way too many words to do that safely. You'd have to try to remember where you were the next time you drove by to pick up there. So we used the, who wants to do that, right? So we selected J&B Graphics for fabrication of the first sign as well as the successive signs, since they were the low bear. And they've been great to work with, honestly. So we had sent that final draft wording on November 15th. We immediately sent that to J&B Graphics for creation of a proof. And if you're interested, it's kind of small on this slide, but this is the wording that was sent to them. I think it changed slightly as we went through the proof process.
Where's the company from?
Oklahoma City. They were all 3 Oklahoma City. So the proof, we talked about a series of things, whether it was a font that we wanted to use, the color of the text, the background color of the sign. We all worked through all this with Andy and the rest of the team, arrived at what we wanted. That is the proof of the first sign on the right side of the slide. And that was received on January 6th of this year. We received notification from J&B that the sign had been fabricated and was ready to be staked for installation. So we staked the location, met Andy at the site. It's on Classen, just south of Lindsay, if you haven't seen it. That was staked on March the 2nd of this year.
That's where we think the tree was?
As near as they can tell, yes. It was slightly west of the sign site, but yeah.
Brahms.
Hmm?
Brahms.
Yes,
That's
Brahms.
what I was gonna say.
Kind of hard to get that not in the picture unless I would have moved the other direction. But, we called in utility locates on March 7th. The footing was dug and poured on March 16th, and the sign was installed on March 18th. So that's been up for a little over a month. The wording for the second sign, a Navy on the Prairie, this is supposed to be somewhere over by Mount Williams, I believe, was sent to J&B Graphics on November 17th. And again, this is the wording that was selected. It was tweaked slightly during the approval of the proof process as well. The same ones that were involved with sign 1. The final proof that is shown to the right was approved on February 9th. We are waiting from J&B Graphics to tell us that the sign has been fabricated so that we could stake the installation and proceed with the installation of the sign. Sign 3, caring for people with mental illness. This is going to be somewhere around Griffin Hospital. A final draft from the committee was received and sent to J&B Graphics on January 13th of this year. We haven't received a proof yet, but this is the wording of the sign. I know it's hard to read on that slide. If you want to, I'll wait and let you finish reading it.
Oh, I was just, it's too long.
Send us the slides.
Yeah,
That's another one they want the slides on.
yeah,
Yes.
please.
So just a little bit of progress on the last 3 signs. We are waiting for that proof of the 3rd sign so we can move forward with fabrication and installation. We haven't got the wording from the advisory group for sign 4, which is the Ada Lewis Sepul Fisher trial. Probably butchered that, but we do have a cost for that sign, so that's kind of dictating where we're going with the rest of the project. The 5th sign is supposed to be something about the Chickasaw ranchers and their impact. We're waiting on the advisory group for the wording of that sign as well. So finances, we started with a budget of $30,000. When we took out the cost of the first sign, which again has been installed, we're down to $24,546.74. The cost of second sign came in a little higher than the first sign. I don't know if they figured out they made a mistake in the first one or why it's higher, but
Supply chain.
supply chain could be that too. So now our balance is down to a little over $18,000. Sign 3 came in pretty close to sign 2, $6,400. So our balance is $11,887. So it's right at that number. If you take that cost for sign 3 and multiply it by 2, it's probably greater than what the balance is that's remaining in our account. So we know we're going to be able to fund sign 4, but we're probably going to come up short on sign 5. I do know that a potential second phase could obviously finish sign 5. It could probably do an additional 4 signs. And that's it.
Councilmember Hall?
Okay, I am really glad to have the summary. I've been also in on the proofreading for the first few signs, so I knew that we definitely were in progress and, you know, keeping the commitment that was made last year for this fiscal year. But the reason that I also brought this forward to continue funding for next year is I didn't know for sure, but wanted to make sure that we actually had covered what we had committed to last year. So we're a little short there, is what I'm hearing you say. And in conversations with Andy Rieger, he is willing and has plenty of ideas to continue with the program. I think it's been really valuable. It's highlighted parts of our story that a lot of people may not well be aware of, and I know he has some ideas for other signs, and I believe, you know, Bob Goins was helping him as well. And so for me personally, I am very interested in, number one, fully funding what we intended to do in year 1, but would like to see it continue in year 2. And I just said $30,000 because that's what we needed the first year, and in reality, we really need a little bit more. But I would love to see this continue. I think it's of interest to people and just adds to, you know, helping people understand our story, our very complex story, not just the obvious story. So I would fully support going forward with year 2.
Well, $30,000 would get us to 9 total signs.
Councilmember Schuler?
I don't know who can answer this, but maybe Councilmember Hall, since you've been in some of the discussions, do you have an idea what the next kind of batch of signs might focus on, like the topics? And I can ask Mr. Rieger
Yeah.
as well, but
No, not in detail, but I know just because Andy is so well versed
Yes.
that he could keep going probably for an indeterminate amount of time. But I know one of the goals of the first, if you can see, is we really are highlighting parts of our story that may not be as well known, And I know he does have a short list of how he would like to continue to move forward, and that, to me, is where we turn that over to his expertise and his background, as well as working through all of, our staff. So I'm comfortable moving ahead, and I think at some point, we would see what the next 4 would look like
Yeah.
as he develops those. But as you can see, we're still have so much in progress that I just want to make sure that we can continue the program at least for a year or 2.
Yeah, I
And
think
he's willing to.
sure, and I think
Yeah.
what is important too is that the first batch of signs has a mix of making sure that we're representing stories that are of cultural importance within our community, and I would like to see that continue. And I think it might be really important as we're thinking about, building our diversity roundtable, that there might be some conversations about other
Yeah, great idea.
historical things that should be talked about that might not have been highlighted in our current history, or that has been brought to light. And so having some really poignant discussions about the complicated past of Norman, and being able to recognize in a understanding that this is where our town has been, and
That's-
not being able to not shying away from shining kind of a light on those.
And I think
that would
that's
be
really good, the
important.
direction that we're going, and I
Yeah.
know they've talked about the history of Lake Thunderbird and the history of our tribal lands and those kinds of
Yeah,
things too.
and I think those things are really important. So I'd like to see if, as we continue, to make sure that we're highlighting those.
Yep, that's the intent.
We have a rare opportunity to work with people like this. Andy Reader has been
Yeah.
He's wonderful.
fun.
He's a
always.
treasure.
But so is Bob Goen.
Yeah.
I know you've been involved, Dr. Carter's remained involved. You don't have citizens step up and volunteer like this very often. So
Yeah.
it's a rare opportunity.
Councilor Studley.
You had mentioned, that was exactly my point, what I was about to bring up with just respect to our indigenous community and the fact that we were a sundown town as well. That needs to be highlighted somewhere. Let's tell the truth of everything. But I was going to ask, you had mentioned about the Lake Thunderbird. Is there a sign out by Lake Thunderbird that discusses that, or is that something that they're looking to do in the future?
I think that's something that we could do.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely,
Yeah.
I think that when we tell the truth, we have to tell the whole truth and then show like where we've come and how far we've come and advanced, and trying to collaborate with everyone in this town now moving forward.
And once you get the slides, I would urge you to read the text for, in particular, the one that'll be placed at Griffin, and how sensitively that language has been handled, I think. So I have a lot of confidence in
Oh,
Andy Rieger.
absolutely, I do
Yeah.
too.
And he understands, we've had the same discussion last year, so, and now, you've heard it again, so I think that's been the direction for the first year, and that's
Awesome.
definitely for year 2.
I have every confidence in Andy Rieger.
Yes.
But yeah, just want to make sure that that's on record and that is our
Yeah.
intent as a council as we continue to, want to appropriate money towards, this worthwhile cause.
He has not told me specifically, but I'm assuming he could go 8 or 9 phases of
Yes.
this if we needed.
My goal is
Sign
to
on every building.
just get us to year 2.
Right.
Let's just keep going while he's willing to collaborate with the city of Norman, and then we'll see what happens in fiscal year
Good one.
ending in 24.
And one that says where the original city hall was, which is not here. There's all sorts of stuff. You could just go on.
Endless.
Maybe the
The
original
original city hall was on Peters and Gray Street.
the original cemetery that I know is on Dutch Brothers property. That's
What's that?
the original cemetery
Oh, right.
that has a little plaque
Yes.
right now.
That'd be a good one too.
Bigger one. Yeah. Old Boot Hill.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments, questions about this one? Okay. All right, item.
For that too?
Thank you very much, yes.
I'd like to see those slides too.
Item number 4 on the agenda this afternoon is a presentation on the final summary of the Campus Corner Infrastructure Project.
I think you get me some
Are you
again.
back?
Yay!
You want to lead off this one?
He said you're already in the chair.
I think you're warmed up.
The chair,
Let it roll, man.
the chair is definitely warm, yeah. Okay, so on this particular presentation, we will talk about all the upgrades that we made on the campus corner area, from lighting to receptacles to the parking upgrades, sidewalk upgrades, and curb upgrades. I'm going to tackle the first three, and Scott's going to handle the last two. So, lighting upgrades. This is we tried to take these shots from the same perspective. So this is a picture of ASP Avenue during daylight on the left and at night on the right, so you can kind of see how it's a little more visible in the dark, perhaps. This is Buchanan from the same sort of a vantage point. Daytime on the left again and nighttime on the right. Yeah, I thought the pictures turned out well. One of my guys got our bucket truck and went out early in the morning to get those nighttime pictures. Yeah, very appreciative of that. He didn't do that on University, though. He took those from the ground, but it wasn't as difficult on University. But the picture on the left again is daytime, and the picture on the right is nighttime. Pretty well lit up.
Under construction.
Under construction.
Well, we wanted to show the reflectiveness on the cones.
Yeah.
It's a demonstration
How
photo.
effective those are.
So, the police department has a drone now, and Michael Robertson is getting great stuff out of that. Is that a type of thing the planning department would want at some point for this type of thing?
Right, I know we
Not just
often share that service for some of our other projects too. So.
Yeah, it seems like that could be a helpful tool potentially for.
We could have had videos instead of pictures.
Yeah.
And those cones are no longer there.
Nope.
It's amazing.
They're in, they're
Yeah,
out.
the cones are gone.
So fast.
So a little bit about the information, the lighting upgrade information. Every fixture out there was rewired and it was upgraded to LED from the dinosaur technology that was there. The voltage that was out there was 480 volts, which you have to be a licensed electrician to work on. None of my signal technicians are licensed electricians, so they can't touch it. We have one licensed electrician in the city in the building maintenance area, and it's not really his job to just maintain our lights for us. So we kind of wanted to drop the voltage to something that our guys could work on. So everything now is 120 volts. No poles were replaced yet. We have found two that are kind of wobbling a little bit. One that was inadvertently left out of the project. If you're on White and you turn right onto University, there's a pole that wasn't part of the original survey, but it's tied to the system. So we've got the pole ordered, we've got the fixture ordered, and we will address that as well. But yeah, we just were out there and said, where'd that pole come from? So you find things like that, I guess. The cost of all the lighting and receptacle upgrades came in at just under $200,000. We did encounter a couple of hiccups along the way. The church driveway that enters White just before you get to University. Apparently, when they installed the driveway, the lights, the conduit that ran between the pole boxes to connect the lights was damaged. So the wire, instead of trying to repair the conduit, they just ran it direct buried in no conduit. So our contractor went out there and tried to pull wire, and of course the conduits collapsed under the driveway, and there is no conduit, it's direct buried. So we had to have that board and boxes adjusted and things like that. But that's the only place that happened, so that wasn't a bad thing. Interestingly enough, 3 poles had different diameters than the standard fixture. So we had to have an adapter
Part of the charm.
created
Part of the charm.
by the manufacturer to work with the pole and the fixture. Not a huge deal, but it was just something we did not anticipate when we went in. Cost of the bore was $1,200. The cost of these adapters was $600 because we ordered a few extras in case we would come across that again. Because undoubtedly we will, or somebody will. Well, if they hit it, the pole might be replaced, but there could be a reason why you need that reducer somewhere else. Receptacle upgrades. This was big for the merchants. A lot of the merchants or excuse me, a lot of the receptacles in the before condition on the left were up near the top of the pole. They didn't really have a way to get up there. I didn't want to see anybody shimmying up the pole to try to plug in the light. A ladder leaning against the pole was just not a good idea. So one of the goals going in was to make sure that all the receptacles were at working height. So that's what the picture on the right is. They're all that way now. If there wasn't a receptacle there before, there is now. If there was one in a tree, we took it out of the tree. I know. Strange things that you see out there. That was on Boyd. There was one actually in a tree. I can't make that up. I just can't. The costs associated with the receptacle upgrades, that was included in the previous figure I gave you, just under $200,000. Again, not all the poles had receptacles. Each one does now. Breaker boxes. When we first started the project, the idea was that each receptacle was going to have a locking cover. Well, that's like 53 locks to purchase. So instead, we decided, what if we turn the breaker off in the breaker box so that there's no power going to the receptacles, lock that, give the merchants a key so they can come, unlock the breaker, flip the switch, and then the receptacles are active. One of the reasons that we were talking about this initially was there's a lot of unintended use of those receptacles. People were doing anything from shaving in storefront windows, charging cell phones. Yeah. So if it's locked and off, that unintended use goes away. Again, all the receptacles are at a working height.
So who actually gets the key? Key or keys?
Christy Hendricks, or
Oh,
Carrie Hendricks got
Okay.
the key. Yes.
The executive director
Yes.
of the Merchants Association.
And we
Okay.
walked and showed her where they're all four located, and if you have any questions, we labeled them, lights, receptacles. This
Okay.
is the one you want to turn. If you don't, you'll make it dark, and then people will start calling us.
We'll call you.
So again, all those were labeled. She got the key. That was about 3 weeks ago, I think we gave her the key. Parking upgrades. You like talking about parking upgrades? It's a sarcastic. Oh, and this is a good thing.
We like upgrades, period.
Okay, I'll have some new information to add about this because it's not even in here. It's that new. The original meters that were out there were installed in 2013. They were supposed to be the next best thing. It turned out we were sold not the right bag of goods.
Baloney.
Yes, baloney. They were supposed to operate on a puck that was installed in the pavement that would, when a car backed out of the parking space, they went over the puck and it sensed that they left and it automatically reset the meter time so that nobody else could use their leftover time. And yeah, I know it sounded great, but the pucks didn't work.
Yeah.
You know, they said, they came back to us and said, did you change the angle of your parking spaces? No. We've not done any construction that would have changed the angle of the parking spaces. I wish Taylor was still here because buses were setting off, were triggering the sensors as they drove down ASP. So meters were resetting and we were getting all these calls that, well, I got a ticket, but I paid.
Oh, okay.
And then they went to this system. We tried it. You'll like this because it was a, what's the word you like?
Pilot.
A pilot. Yes, it was a pilot.
A demonstration
Where they had
My
these
favorite.
radar units that were mounted in the top of the signal of the parking meter head, and it would shine a beam out. And they couldn't get that to work because it was the car next to it was setting it off. This is not good. So they didn't understand. They said they had this technology, but they really didn't. So we were pushing the merchants to try to, hey, we need to make a change. And we really need to go to pay stations. It's just easier for everybody. So that's one of the ones on the right that was installed as part of this project. 14 pay stations were installed. We got a lot of feedback from merchants early on, but that's really died off. They were concerned about the locations that we didn't, can we put one here? Well, not with the budget we have, we can't, no, but let's try this and see if what you're raising isn't really an issue or something like that. We took out all the single space meters, so it cleaned up the sidewalk quite a bit. Fewer obstacles for the pedestrians. Now we're finding that the pay stations can be obstacles, but for different reasons. We did 14. There were some single space meters that had to remain because they were in areas that it didn't make sense to put a pay station for 7 meters that might not get used very often. The ones north on Buchanan, for example, don't hardly ever get used. So we kept some single space meters. The cost of those upgrades came in about $107,000.
I don't know if you guys just want him to keep going, he can do my section too, or I can take over. It's really,
Oh, we want to give you a chance too.
I don't know, his was
I need a
pretty
break.
good. He did really good today.
I'm exhausted.
So along with this,
Before we move on from parking real quick, has the complaints died down now that people are more accustomed to like what the new process is? Because I know when they initially got installed, people were like confused. They didn't know how it worked, and all
And
of
honestly,
that.
we weren't hearing those complaints.
Okay.
Most of them were going to the merchants.
Okay.
And we would get, Rainey Powell is the best example I have. He would send me this random email, say, pay stations still aren't working, you gotta go to pay by space, where you put the space number, and people don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I need something that I can go and look at.
Well,
Random things like that don't help me.
Well, I had some correspondence back and forth with the city manager when they first got installed because I'm on campus a lot, or I'll walk over, or I'll, kind of zip in to go to Starbucks or something. And initially, the interface wasn't working. It was asking for a space.
Yes.
Instead of just like the zone.
And we got that
And so that you
fixed.
got that fixed really quick. And then, just some questions about like timing and why the pricing was the way that it was. And so once those all kind of were explained, I think it really made a lot of sense. I will say that I love how all of the obstacles of the parking meters have been removed, because walking down that corridor and on the sidewalk, if you're walking with other people and then you've got other, pedestrians walking down, you'd have to like walk around. So it's so nice to just kind of have a much freer flow of ease of like walking down the street. And what I also love is that OU uses the same pay station technology, and so all of the parking lots that are kind of in that area are on the same app. So you have one app, you can just punch your stuff in. It saves you, your license plate and all of that kind of stuff. You just have a profile, you just pop in. So sometimes you don't even need to go to the pay station. You can just hop in there. So I think that students, that's really easy for them, and they understand it. I see most of the people that I see at the pay stations are like parents. When they're like with their students and things like that.
These
I
kind of
don't
people.
see the students at the pay stations very often. So I have really enjoyed the upgrades.
Yes, they've been overall good. There used to be one right in front of the door of the deli, and I used it to lean on a lot when I was working. I would lean onto it. So now I don't have anything. I don't have a leaning post anymore.
You know the story about that, behind that one, right?
No.
That we were told that the bands that perform use that door to go in
Well,
and
no,
out.
the old parking meter that was there.
Oh, no, it's
Yeah.
not the deli.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the new pay station that's in front of the deli, I did have to ask Daryl to,
Right.
because of Valare's fence thing,
Yeah.
ramp that they have right there. And yes, the vans do load in and out of that door, and that door swings out, and it created like a space that big to walk through. And because of that ramp, people can't get to Valare by walking through the street. They have to walk around it, and
Right.
so people were like, they had about this much room to put in their stuff, and the door opened. But it's all worked out, I think now. And so, Councilor Hall.
Yeah, and I think we had to move the one in front of Balfour's too. Wasn't that the other one did we move that one?
There were 4 or 5 that were moved.
Yeah.
For various reasons.
So I really appreciate, having to make that adjustment based on real time what was happening. But overall, I think this is such a positive improvement. And oddly enough, to your point, There is a Ward 4 post that was made immediately after everything was installed that, was basically trending wildly. And that post reappears periodically of people registering their new complaints. But it's been a great opportunity to really say, you can still use coins. We have campus corner merchants that provide free parking to you behind their businesses. And it is, I mean, for the student population, it's seamless. They know exactly what to do. For people, let's say in my age group, it's a little more challenging, but they still have other options, even if they don't, if they want to avoid learning how to do an app, or they can still put coins in there. So it's been a great opportunity to keep saying there are other options. One of the other things we did is, in my work with the Campus Corner Merchants Association, we also talked about doing a frequently asked question type of thing that they could have for their employees, which of course there's a lot of turnover there. And it's an opportunity for the businesses to really engage with their customers, to help them and answer just really common things. And especially with a student that is so, it's their native language to work with an app. And it's just a great opportunity to have the interface with the business, with the customer, of saying, okay, we'll help you, we'll help you. So I think most of it is an education piece at this point, and just trying to say to people, you have multiple options. You can still use coins. If you're app averse, you have other parking options. So I think it's mostly just an education thing, but I think it's worked out great. We did have a few little rough spots at the beginning, but
That's gonna happen.
literally once all that got, I just sit in my car with my app.
Well, you're gonna have a new option here
Oh.
soon. Flowbird has rolled out a pay by text option.
Oh, wow.
I've sent the paperwork
Okay,
in.
nice.
Our Treasury is working on how to get it to the right account and stuff.
Yeah.
Once that's done, that will be another option.
Great.
You don't have to use the app, so maybe the older crowd would be more in tune with the text than the app.
Yeah, so I think it's just a constant awareness and getting the merchants involved too, and helping their customers learn how to do it. Because once you learn how to do it, it's really pretty easy. So that's all. I think it's been great.
No, great comments and questions. So along with this, we also did have the portion where we worked on curb and gutter. That was really the request that came in, was curb and gutter locations. We went out there, and I'll show you a little bit more about that, but we decided there was some sidewalk work that we felt needed to be done too. There's still a lot more we could do out there, but this was a great start. Kind of wanted to quickly just go through the timeline, because this is a really unusual project. Moved very quickly. I don't normally just put April for 3 items, but it moved so quickly I was having trouble discerning what happened when. So of course we got the contact by the campus corner, a couple of the constituents down there, just really complaining about the lighting and the curbs and gutters, and so we reacted quickly. There was some funding identified to do the sidewalk and curb repairs in the Community Neighborhood Improvement Project account. So we were able to move quickly because we had a funding source available. We really quickly went out and put together a quick package. I think we advertised on the 22nd and the 29th of April. May 17th, we got our bids in. The low bidder was at about $135,000. So we got a little bit of savings there. The 25th, we were at council. That's a pretty quick turnaround for us. Council approved the contract. June 3rd, we're out there starting work. So, I love it when we can really turn something around fast, because sometimes it's really slow to get a project moving.
Why doesn't the city do this every time?
Yeah, that's. But this
That's
one,
my Teddy Lehman, Tyler McComas voice from the afternoon. That's how they talk.
but we got this one cranking, and of course, the whole goal was to be out of there before rush week. We could not have that. A lot of those businesses down there, that's a big chunk of their year, is that when all those, young freshmen are here going through rush and coming down and buying all their new sorority and fraternity gear right there off the bat. So they had to be out by August 13th in 2013.
Back 8 years.
Wow.
We were so good that we actually rolled the clocks back.
And fixed it 10 years ago. Wow.
We were ahead of our time here. But we were able to make the date. We did get it completed in time. This was the map that they provided. That they identified, I believe it's 27, 29, 30. There it is, 30 total locations. And we went out and we went through each one of these. Our map looks a little bit different. You can see we've got some bigger areas. We've got more spots. We actually had a lot more work than what they identified because and another thing they asked for was to paint some of those yellow curbs that, people ran into. They're now kind of black and yellow, and they really weren't very attractive. But by the time that we went through that project area, David kind of identified it before, was from University to ASP and Boyd up to White. So, pretty good little area there. And this is what we found. We found to replace 285 square yards of concrete. And if you're trying to think what a square yard is, that's 4 of these ceiling tiles. So that gives you a visual of what we replaced. So if you take 4 of those, that's about a square. In fact, it looks like it's almost exactly a square yard to me just sitting here. So that kind of gives you kind of a visual. So we had 285 square yards of concrete, 215 square yards of colored and stamped concrete. We replaced about 500 linear foot of curb. We painted 183 linear feet of curb. We replaced or fixed 28 square yards of ADA ramps. We brought those into compliance where they needed to be. We were going to remove the pipe rail fence that's right there on White Street, right at ASP. We were going to move it back about 3 or 4 feet and widen that to be a little bit more of a walkway. Unfortunately, we weren't able to complete that work. We worked with that property owner. The agreement wasn't coming along in a time frame that we could get it in this project. There's also a pole and guy wires that we cannot relocate right now. So we just pulled that out of this project just to get this done. We felt it was much more important to get the project done than to spin our wheels on something like that that could be done at a later date.
That is definitely something I want to see done at a later date for sure. And I don't know what OG&E's appetite is for that, but there's only like 5 power poles on Campus Corner, right there on White, and then it curves and goes down Buchanan. So it would be extremely helpful to be able to get those removed someday, and to widen that side of the street, because that side of the street is what we've talked about before, but that's where most people actually walk, because they're coming from ASP and they just naturally, or they're coming around from Sideline or of Buchanan and they just naturally walk that.
Sure, and we really did want to get that completed. Of course, we also had the project when we were looking at taking White to the one-way, which would have given us some space to do some additional work here. Like I said, it's not that the property owner was not being cooperative, it's just we couldn't get the agreement in place.
Sure.
So it's not something that's dead. We're looking for opportunities where we could maybe reapproach that and try to move that forward.
Well, it's
at a
much
later
better
date.
now than it used to be before White Street was reconstructed, when the curb was all busted down. There was like a grassy little strip you could walk through and some jagged metal. So it's a lot better now. But I would definitely support trying to get that in the future for sure.
We'll keep that on our radar and see if we can find another project or opportunity to slide that in. It's not very big, but it's more that pre-work, getting everything laid out, getting utilities moved. For such a small project, it's a very large effort. So these are the photos that they sent to us. I'm not going to go through each one. You can generally see busted concrete, nasty looking curbs. It's the last time we did any work out here was right after I got to work here, or as I was getting to work here, and I've been here for 10 years. And we went through and we did some work in the area. We did some of the stamped and colored concrete that's in. We did the crosswalks up at White and Asp. Some great work, but we really hadn't been back and done much maintenance. So this is good timing. Glad to get it done, keeping a vibrant area looking really fresh and clean. Just more of the photos. It's just the same thing, just over and over. You can see, like number 14 there, that's an ADA ramp. It's all busted out. Well, that's not good. We got to make sure those are compliant. Again, these are the rest of the pictures. It's just the same thing over and over and over. So, going to do a little bit of before and after look here so we can kind of show you what we did. This location, and this is, of course, right there at Asp and Boyd, kind of in front of the Starbucks there. You can see it's just been hit by who knows how many trucks and trailers and vehicles and baby strollers and whatever else tries to go through there. And it chipped it out and broke it. We're able to come in, we're able to do a nice repair to it, make it look much cleaner, much fresher, give it a nice final look to it.
But that's also why we didn't put the pay station there.
Because of so many people running over.
Yeah.
Good thinking.
This one I thought was really interesting. When you look at the before picture, there's 2 roof drains that came under the sidewalk and came out right there. Man, those look nice. That's just what we want to see in our campus corner area.
Busted PVC pipe.
They busted PVC pipes sticking out from, little, just not a good look. So they came in, they did a great job. You can see they came in, they put a little, I believe that's actually metal now instead of PVC pipe. It's square, cleaned it up, dressed it out. Now it's something that makes it look like it was actually designed to be there. We actually had 2 interesting photos. So I just put both of them in, and this is kind of right there outside of Chipotle. This one, as I was rehearsing this one, I think we did a great job. We actually changed everything here from the before picture that was broken curb there to a complete angled curb. I actually didn't have a before picture of this one, and I was looking for one and ran out of time.
We understand.
I just got to be honest with you. It's been a fun week.
It was a placeholder.
But this is that after photo is another area there. It's again right there near the Starbucks. You can see where we did some really nice work, cleaned it up, much better. But like I said, I don't know how we got rid of the pipes there. ADA ramp just chipped and broken out. We were able to go in there, do a nice repair, clean it up, make it look a lot better. This one, you can just see we had busted up concrete, chipped out. You could tell that's again where trucks are coming out. They're just hitting it. They've just chipped it out. The concrete was still fresh when we took the pictures here. So this is right there at Fuzzy's, and then the alleyway just south of Fuzzy's.
Was it one of the pay stations there
Yes.
that got hit?
Yes.
Okay.
Delivery truck.
Yeah.
Gotta love delivery
We had
trucks.
to take it to our fleet division so they could bend the
Even though
metal
they're not-
back straight.
Even though they're not supposed to be parking right there.
Right.
They're supposed to be on the other side of the street.
Yeah.
And I will say
Another
that
story.
Yeah.
the 2 projects didn't necessarily line up exactly together. So part of the removal of the old individual meters, that left the holes, and they came in and put concrete down. Councilmember Holman reached out and said, "Hey, that looks a little rough." We went back out there, we painted it, and over time we'll have to watch that. But we did. That was just something that it just didn't coordinate together, and it wasn't in their contract. Colored concrete costs almost double what regular concrete costs. And red is the hardest color. So you got to use a whole lot of dye. It's really complicated. So red is always it's our go-to, and it's the hardest one to get done right.
Oh, you.
But we sure like it.
Cheaper than actual bricks, though.
Yeah, in long term, we have to keep going out and doing repair on the along Boyd where they will sink, or there'll be a problem, or one will chip out. This is a long term. It takes less maintenance, and really most people don't notice the difference. Now, one thing that you can do to make it a little bit more longer lasting, and what we did on Main Street with the Main Street Streetscape project on the west side of Main Street, west of the tracks, is we actually, those are laying on, we actually put concrete down and they're set in, and so they're sitting on concrete. So they're not mortared in, they're not sitting on sand. So it takes a lot more effort. And then if you ever have to replace a brick, you're never gonna find a brick that's the same color. So you wind up with something that doesn't match, it doesn't look right, and it just over time, it's really hard to maintain. So the stamped and colored concrete is a good alternative. It's cost effective. We can do a lot more for a much better price point, and maintenance of it. Generally, we use a typical stamp that's very common. And if you do have to come in and do something that's not stamped, it's not quite so obvious when you come in as opposed to bricks.
The original brick is mostly still underneath ASP
Yeah.
as well. The last couple times we repaved it, you can still see it.
Yeah, you can get that into it. And
It's pretty cool.
I like this one. This is right there as you're on University. We've poured asphalt, and our 6-inch curb is now about 2.5 inches. And it was just damaged, it was failing, it was falling apart. They came in, I thought the contractor here just did a great job where they came in, they cut out a little extra. They actually made it a functioning curb line, And I felt that our contractor really worked with us, really did a good job. Their workmanship, their quality, their attention to detail was really, really good, and really happy. Rudy Construction was our contractor on this. Again, this is going down Buchanan, just some chipped out. And this is an area where we actually have the brick pavers. We actually, in a portion of this, replaced some of it because it needed to be replaced. You can see they took out a little bit extra just to get it to actually look well. But they came in behind this and actually put the bricks back in place. You can see they stacked them up there behind the curb line.
So 2 of the pay stations that had to be relocated were actually installed in pavers. There was one on Boyd, the one nearest Starbucks. You could rock that pay station back and forth because those bricks were not
right.
solid. So we had to move to a solid location.
Interesting.
A couple on Buchanan. The one there on the left, I actually didn't have a before picture, but just to show you some of what we got to deal with. 5 water meters, and we just went in and did the best we could to get around it. And then obviously here down close to the hideaway, some chipped away. We actually wound up replacing part of that whole drive there to actually make it look better and make it more ADA compliant. Just so you know, the standards we've applied all rules. They had to follow our engineering design criteria, and they had to meet all the ADA guidelines, and then we made sure that we did the best we could matching any stamped and colored concrete. It was a challenging project. Before the project, we went down there and met with the Campus Corner merchants and had a long talk with them, let them know what was coming. Of course, they were excited about it, but it was the typical questions. What about our business? What about when you're working in front of our business? What about our parking? What about traffic control? So engineering staff were down there daily, making sure things were done right. Our inspector was going in. We were communicating constantly with the store owners, with the property owners, and making sure that they were well taken care of. Obviously, this turnaround time was difficult, but they did a great job. And we were pretty strict on them not being in there at times when it was going to interfere with anything major. And as always, weather is always an interesting option for us to deal with. So just to kind of discuss the budget quickly, the initial budget we had $200,000. Bids came in about $135,000. We only had one change order, and that was the final change order for about $20,000, $21,000. We actually had to do more work on Buchanan than we expected, especially in that brick area, so that cost us a little bit more. And there was an old utility vault there that had a concrete top that was just completely failing. And we actually had to go in there, take that out and replace it. And also there were some times where our contractor just said, hey, can we fix that too? And we said, absolutely. We decided it was money well spent. We were well within our budget. And so we went ahead and handled a few extra things that came up during construction that we found. So we wound up at about $156,000. You know, you think about the amount of work that was done, but just to show that it's difficult to maintain some of these areas like this over time. That's really all I had.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. That's all I want to say. This really all started with, multiple Campus Corner Merchants meetings. I want to also say thank you to Sarah Kaplan, who is consistent with her relationships with the Campus Corner Merchants Association, the downtowners, and I also really want to thank the support of the council too, because these are things that have been kind of chronic in nature. It really all started when we were talking about a lighting plan for the holiday season, and it was like, yeah, we can't plug anything in. And anyway, it's one thing led to another. So I think you all have an idea now of the tremendous amount of work that was done in a very short period of time. And just to go and stand on Campus Corner knowing this now and seeing this before and after, it is really dramatic. And it's going to definitely benefit the business owners and the property owners. And, we talk a lot about how Campus Corner may, how important what their vision for the future is. And especially we're going to open the Noun Hotel soon. We're going to be joining the SEC. So I absolutely applaud everybody that had a part in this, and thank you for everything that you've done and the speedy timeline and doing it at a time where it was the least disruptive, and having it ready to roll when we had a whole new freshman class join OU. So to me, this has been such a great demonstration of what cities do. Responded to concerns. There was a lot of different moving parts here. And I think it's just been such a positive benefit that we're gonna, see in years to come. So I just am so proud of everything that we got to do for Campus Corner. And I think it just looks great. It looks like we care about the place. We've kept the lights on, all those things. So it's just been a tremendous benefit for not only the community who lives and works there every day, but for all of the visitors that come to Norman. It's just another way, just like with downtown Main Street, it's, it's a little crown jewel, and we've definitely done our part to contribute to the improvements on Campus Corner. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
I'll just say I didn't get a single call from a business during that time. So your guys on the street did a fantastic job
Yeah.
keeping all the visitors informed. I didn't get a single call.
Yeah,
That's great.
and I think they're so appreciative of getting to see all of it kind of come together in a very short period of time. So thank you for all your efforts.
Yes. So $45,000 in savings. What do we plan to do with that, or do we?
Goes fund balance.
Goes
It's
back.
very similar, like every project comes from, I don't know if we close these out or not.
Because I'd almost like to,
Yeah, this was closed
Yeah,
out.
we'll close them out of that.
almost
goes
like to
fund
set it
balance.
aside for Campus Corner purposes, either the
Sure, you
future
can do
sidewalk
that.
project or ongoing maintenance. Because I know Main Street's working on a bid thing. And
We've been encouraging the Campus Corner merchants for quite some time to walk down that path, and I think downtown is really moving along at this point, so we're hoping that they're gonna be the role model to
Right.
pull Campus Corner over the finish
Well,
line on that,
They're
so.
both are big tourist
Yes.
destinations, and especially game days, a lot of visitors. Impression of Norman is what they see on Campus Corner, and so those factors kind of push me towards those areas. Would make sense to have some city public funding for upkeep and stuff, and so, especially since we're spending all the money to fix it up, try to maintain that look and the niceness of it.
Encourage
So,
you
just-
to encourage those
Uh,
business and property
Yes,
owners to
yes.
get on board.
Full ownership,
Yes.
private
Yeah,
ownership.
exactly. We put it
Yes.
in, now you guys maintain it.
So in this case, what we did is we identified that one budget location, and we said we think we can do it for the $200,000. The only funds that were appropriated to the project would have been the $155,000. When we came to council, we said we'd like to appropriate this to this contract, and then you allowed us to appropriate the fund to the additional funds for the change orders. So we came in below budget, but it wasn't like we had a separate budget item and there was extra funding. We just didn't take as much from the fund where we initially started from.
Okay.
And we spent all that we asked for the lighting and the parking too. So.
Yeah.
Well, and I can tell you, the lighting was noticeable. The first time I worked at the deli after it was finished, everybody was commenting like, "It is bright out here." I was
You
like,
can't
"Yeah,
run
the
and
city.
you
We just
can't
came in,
hide."
we just replaced all the lights and stuff." They're like, "Wow."
It's such a clean light, the LED is
Yeah.
such
Yeah.
a clean light, and the older lights were so yellow, and it just.
Yeah,
you don't
yellow.
know- You don't see that, but
It
it's
was
remarkable.
it was
LED.
definitely dim. I wish we had a kind of before and after nighttime picture of like this is what.
I couldn't find
Campus
anybody
Corner.
that wanted to take before pictures that I could have.
Yeah, yeah. So 2 questions though about the lighting, maybe 2, but really 1. On White Street, those 2 power poles, the one that's at the corner of White and Buchanan, and the one that's mid-block, both have street lights attached to them, and one of them has a newer fixture that matches all of them. But for a long time had a different color light bulb than all the rest, which was, it was and then the one on the corner though, maybe it's been addressed, but that power pole had 2 old fixtures, one pointed this way and one pointed this way, And the last time I checked, they were still the old ones, and they had different colored, the old lights in them still. So I didn't know if that was something we were.
Look into that.
We'll check
Okay.
it out.
But yeah, just continuity, I guess.
Yeah.
Noticing that. Other than that, are not necessarily part of this project, maybe, but our city parking lot. We talked about maybe some enhanced signage and things like that. Is that something that might be coming back separately to
The
us?
signage was addressed
At the city parking lot?
to direct people that
Yeah.
were making that circle to get.
Well, I was like thinking of something at the entrance of the parking lot
Okay.
that says public parking. Because like when you drive past it right now, I don't think if I didn't know that it was a public
Yeah.
parking
Yeah,
lot, because
I
it's just
agree.
a
We'll look
concrete
at that.
wall and a pay station. I mean, if there was just something that said City of Norman or Campus Corner parking free or not free parking,
look
but
at that.
Campus Corner parking, and I know we had discussed about the cost of it as well, about maybe adjusting that.
And
So-
see, I'm still trying to hear from the merchants about the loading zones. Are there
Okay.
issues with the loading zones? I know that we need to come back about
Right,
that.
just yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to double check that we were still.
It's just moving at a snail's pace, to say the least.
We'll follow up there. Our attempt was to try to not pollute the area with a bunch of additional
Sure.
signs initially, but you're right, people are confused.
Just that part, the entrance to off of ASP or something to the lot could say something about public parking. But yeah, I'll look forward to those items coming back at a later date. So other than that, yeah, I think it looks great. It's a good look for us going into SEC whenever that may happen. I keep hearing every day that parts of it maybe I don't know. It could be next season. It could be 2025. I mean, so.
It's coming.
But it's important that those details like that, the busted curb, the tire marks, all that stuff, to me makes a difference in people's impression when they come here. So, any other comments or questions about Campus Corner stuff? Okay. Well, that's it. Thank you very much for your presentation, your work. And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.